Before you judge your parents, you need to meet your ancestors. The ones from 40,000 years ago. The ones crouched by a fire on an open plain, raising a child the way no one alive today ever could. Because what they did to their children was gentler than you imagined and far more brutal than you are ready for. And by the time this is over, the quiet list you keep about your own mother and father might read completely differently. Somewhere in the back of your mind, there is a list. You have read it more times than you would admit. The thing they said once that still finds you at 2 in the morning. The moment they weren't there. The way they loved you in a language you had to spend half your life learning to translate. You tell yourself they did their best. But some quiet part of you keeps score anyway. So here is a question that might unsettle you. If you could trace your family backward, past your grandparents, past the farms and the crowded villages, back 40,000 years to a single fire burning on an open plain, would you find better parents waiting there? Or would you find something far stranger? You probably picture the ancient mother as gentle, endlessly patient, a soft figure who carried her baby against her skin and never once raised her voice. Half of that picture is true. The other half would stop you cold. Start with the carrying, because that part is real. In the few foraging societies that survived into the modern age, anthropologists found something that looks almost impossible to a tired parent today. The infant was held, constantly, skin against skin, day and night, for years. Melvin Connor spent his career studying the Jew Huanzi people of the Kalahari, and what he recorded there rewired how scientists think about babies. Their infants were carried upright against the body for most of the day. They were fed not on a schedule, but on demand. Sometimes several times in a single hour. In short, frequent bursts. They slept beside their mothers. And because a cry was answered almost before it finished, those babies, by and large, simply did not cry the way ours do. Sit with that for a second. The thing you were told was inevitable. The screaming, the colic, the long nights of a baby who will not be soothed may be partly a symptom of how we live now, not how a baby is built. So far, this sounds like paradise, the perfect parent. Present, warm, never more than an arm's length away. But here is the first turn in the story. She was not doing it alone, and she was never meant to. The anthropologist Sarah Blaffer Herdy gave this idea its sharpest form. Human beings, she argued, are cooperative breeders. From the very first hours of life, your ancient ancestor was not the property of one exhausted woman. The baby was passed from hands, to grandmothers, to aunts, to older siblings, to women who had no children of their own. Herdy called these other carers alloparents, the other parents. And in the deep past, you had many of them. This was not a nice bonus. It was the load-bearing wall of the entire human project. Think about what a human infant actually is. It is born absurdly early, helpless, with a brain so hungry it burns a quarter of the body's energy. It cannot cling, cannot walk, cannot feed itself for years. No other great ape produces a creature this expensive. A mother on her own, in a hard world, simply could not have paid the bill. So the village was not a slogan stitched onto a pillow. The village was survival infrastructure. The baby that lived was the baby that many people chose to keep alive. Which raises an uncomfortable question. If raising you took a crowd, what happened when the crowd was struggling? Here the gentle picture cracks open and you meet the part nobody puts on a pillow. Childhood, in much of the human past, was not sacred. The anthropologist David Lancy spent decades comparing how children were treated across hundreds of societies, and his conclusion is hard to hear. In most of them, children were not the glowing center of the household. They were not photographed, scheduled, praised, and consulted. For long stretches, especially after weaning, they were simply expected to get out of the way and learn by watching. Lancy describes a kind of benign neglect that would horrify a modern parent. A toddler, once off the breast, might be handed to a pack of older children and left to figure out the world at the edge of adult life. Nobody knelt to their level. Nobody narrated their feelings back to them. They were loved, often, but they were not the project. The adults had a world to keep running, and a small child was, for a while, more burden than treasure. And there was a darker arithmetic underneath all of it. In a world where many infants died before their 5th year, deep attachment to a newborn could be dangerous to the heart. Some societies delayed naming a child, delayed grieving, held back a portion of love until the baby had proven it would stay. The weaning itself could be abrupt and brutal. A child pushed suddenly from constant closeness into the cold, sometimes when a new sibling arrived and the body's milk was needed elsewhere. In the very hardest moments, famine, drought, a birth too soon after the last, ancient parents sometimes faced choices so severe that no modern word fits them cleanly. Choices about which life the group could carry and which it could not. By the standards of your comfortable century, some of those decisions look monstrous. By the standards of a fire on a freezing plain with not enough food to go around, they were the cruel mathematics of keeping anyone alive at all. So were they tender or were they harsh? They were both, at the same time, in the same hands. And before you decide they were simply cold, look at the fathers, because here the story turns again, and this time it turns warm. You have an image in your head of the ancient father, distant, out hunting, grunting by the fire, useless with an infant. The anthropologist Barry Hewlett went and lived among the Aka, a foraging people of Central Africa, and measured what fathers actually did. What he found is the most involved fatherhood ever recorded in any human society. AKA fathers held their infants for hours, soothed them, slept with them, were within arm's reach of their babies nearly half of every day. A father might offer his own nipple to a fussing child simply to calm it. So the absent caveman dad is, in large part, a story we told ourselves. The capacity for a deeply hands-on father is not a modern invention. It is ancient. It has been inside the human male the entire time. Now step back and feel the full shape of it. The ancient parent was constant, and the ancient parent was harsh. Surrounded by helpers, hardened by death, indulgent with infants, indifferent to toddlers, capable of tenderness that shames us and decisions that horrify us. There is no clean verdict. There is only a creature doing something staggeringly difficult in conditions you can barely imagine. And that brings us back to you and to the list in the back of your mind. Because there is one more piece of science here, and it is the one that might actually change how you see your own childhood. John Bowlby, the psychiatrist who built attachment theory, asked a simple question. Why does a baby panic when its mother leaves the room? Why does that small separation feel to an infant like the end of the world? His answer was evolution. For almost the entire human story, a baby left alone was a baby that could die. To a predator, to the cold, to the dark. So your alarm system was tuned over countless generations to one rule. Stay close to a body. Never be alone. The terror a child feels at being left is not weakness. It is an ancient survival instinct, switched on in a world that no longer matches it. And that mismatch is the whole tragedy of modern parenting. Evolution built you for the village. It assumed the grandmother at the fire, the aunt with the spare breast, the cousins underfoot, the dozen hands that caught the baby when the mother's arms gave out. Then the modern world arrived and quietly dissolved every part of it. We sealed the family into a box. 4 walls. 2 adults, often one. No fire, no aunties, no crowd. Just a parent, alone, running software written for a tribe on a machine built for solitude. So think again about your own mother, your own father, whatever is on that list. They were not failing some easy standard that ancient parents sailed past. They were attempting something no ancestor of yours ever had to do. Raise a human being almost entirely alone, cut off from the very network that made human parenting possible in the first place. They were exhausted in a way the plains never demanded, isolated in a way the fire never allowed. They improvised badly sometimes, the way anyone improvises at a task they were never equipped to face by themselves. Did ancient humans have bad parents? The honest answer is that the question is the wrong one. They had parents who were generous and brutal, present and hardened, surrounded by a help you will never know. Not better than yours. Not worse. Just held up by a world that no longer exists. So go back, one last time, to that list in the back of your mind. Maybe it was never a record of everything your parents got wrong. Maybe, all along, it has been a record of how alone they were when they had to write it.